Welcome to the third episode of Empty Hand, Open Mind. I'm Steve Wilson. I'm your host. I've trained in Goju Ryu Karate for 53 years. I spent the first 14 years of training in Goju Ryu with the Japanese Goju Kai under the Yamaguchi family, beginning in 1973. 14 years later, I began training in Okinawan Goju Ryu and have trained in Okinawan Goju Ryu ever since. Tonight, I would like to talk about kata. So in Goju Ryu, there has been a lot published and a lot of discussion about that Higona Kanyo sensei, Miyagi Chojun sensei's teacher, only brought back 4 kata from China with him, and that Nahate consisted of 4 kata. So those kata were Sanchin, Sanseru, Seisan, and Sumparumpe, also known as Pitchurun. However, the problem with that, or not a problem, but a potential debate with that, is that Miyagi Chojun Sensei took credit for forming the Gigsai Kata, Gigsai Daiichi, and Gigsai Daini with Shoshin Nagamine Sensei of Matsubayashi Shorin-ryu in 1940. He also took credit for forming the Tensho Kata, considered his masterpiece. He created Tensho in 1929. Many people have stated, and also a few have written, that he created it upon his return from Hawaii, having spent a little over a year in Hawaii in the 1930s. However, that's not correct. He actually formed Tensho Kata in 1929. So people state regarding Tensho that it was derived, and probably his friend Gogenki influenced his development of Tensho, and that Tensho was formed from the Chinese kata Rokishu. My research has led me to believe, and form my opinion, that Rokishu was actually a Chinese hand exercise and not a full or complete kata. It was a Chinese hand exercise used in many systems, and it was referred to as Rokishu. So why did Miyagi Sensei just not create a kata out of Rokishu, the hand exercise? Well, he did in part. So the up and down movements and the side to side movements are all from Rokishu hand exercises, Chinese hand exercises for martial artists. The remainder of Tensho is a deconstruction, so to speak, of Toraguchi Mawashi Uke. And so Tensho is supposed to represent the Ju in Goju Ryu. However, today, Tensho is often performed just as hard as Sanchin in many dojo and in many organizations. And that absolutely was not its purpose. You already have Sanchin for that. Some people theorize that the reason for that is because that Tensho became so hard is because it began with doing Tensho. And after a couple of steps in doing Sanchin, it began with Sanchin. It began with Sanchin. And after doing a couple steps in Sanchin and utilizing full tension and everything that you use in Sanchin, then you went into performing Tensho Kata. So the beginning of Tensho Kata, simulating and following along in the beginning with Sanchin Kata, may have resulted in it becoming very Go instead of very Ju. Other people state that, well, no, the breathing is Ju. So regardless of what one believes, after 53 years of practice and having interviewed 5 first-generation students, having trained a little with 3 first-generation students, having trained with an Okinawan 10th Dan master at Hanbu Dojo for 7 years, having trained with a first-generation student of Miyagi Chojun Sensei's who trained from 1930 to 1935 or 1936 with him. I trained with him for 8 hours a day for a week. But all that research and discussions I've came to the conclusion that Tensho was much more um, Jew originally, as it was intended, and as people still say today, but don't actually perform it that way. And so Tensho's base is like Sanchin. So you're in Sanchin Dachi stance and hourglass stance, and you're rooted to the ground, and you tense and you set and lock your tendon. But from your tendon up and to your shoulders, you have controlled tension, but not extreme dynamic tension. The breathing is much softer, and it shouldn't be as focused or hard. And so it has a completely different purpose than Sanchin Kata. You do it the way you're taught and do it the way you believe, but I'm just discussing about kata and some history. So back to the kata of Goju Ryu. That's kind of I just shared a feeler of, we can go into Tensho further later in another episode. But Miyagi Chojun Sensei took credit for the Gigisai kata that he formed in 1940. He took credit for forming Tensho in 1929. All those were accredited to him. He also stated that he thought that everyone should practice Nahanchi, and that Miyagi Chojun himself practiced Nahanchi. So I don't understand why, if Miyagi Chojun Sensei will take credit for Gigsai kata and Tensho kata, why he wouldn't take credit for having created Saifa, Seiyunshin, Sisonshin, Seipai, Kurorunfa, etc., which is what a lot of people state. However, I couldn't find one first generation student who said that's what he told them. So I also learned from interviewing first generation students that in those times, they didn't ask Sensei Miyagi questions very often. Mainly, they learned from him telling stories and talking about karate following training. Sometimes until the sun rose. Sometimes until 1 or 2 in the morning. Sometimes till midnight. Other times all the way till morning. Miyagi Chojun Sensei talked. And during those talks, he talked about many things, but he really talked a lot about karate. Miyagi Chojun Sensei didn't tell any of the first generation students that I interviewed or any of them that I trained with that he created those other kata. Those students stated that 4 of the 5 stated that Miyagi Chojun Sensei told them that he brought those kata, he got those kata from Higona Kanyo Sensei, who got those kata from China. None of us know whether or not that's correct. None of us have the opportunity to ask Miyagi Chojun Sensei or Higona Kanyo Sensei. So we just have to derive our own conclusions. I don't really care who formed them. I don't care if they came from Higona Kanyo Sensei. I don't care if they came from Miyagi Chojun Sensei. They're a part of the Goju Ryu curricula today. And that's what I study, and that's what all of you study that practice Goju Ryu. So regardless of where they came from, it's not worth really fighting about. It won't change anything. The important thing is that we practice those kata and that we retain them, we preserve them, and we pass them on to the next generation so that style lives. So regarding kata, Gigsai Daiichi Ni in 1940 were formed to kind of standardize karate. They were for school kids, for high school kids, middle school kids. And they kind of just took the basics. Gigsai Daiichi Ni took the basics and put them together into a kata to be an introductory kata that was easier and that focused on basics compared to the classical kata of Goju Ryu. So the Heishu kata, or Sanchin, and some people include Tensho. Others include just Sanchin and don't include Tensho. I don't care about that either. The other kata are Kaishu kata, and those kata are the classical and primarily open hand kata of Goju Ryu. So with that being said, Miyagi Chojun Sensei also created Gigsai Daiichi Ni besides an introductory kata, but to get young men in high school fit for military service and to teach them a little bit of aggression instead of so much defense. So Gigsai Daiichi therefore ends stepping forward instead of backward. And so backward is passive, forward is aggressive. And I want to talk a little bit more about Sanchin. Originally, Sanchin was open hand. I only found one first generation student that knew the open hand version of Sanchin that Miyagi Chojun Sensei passed on and showed him in the 30s, early 30s. So it absolutely existed, and the hands were closed for safety and to teach the general public and to teach large groups of students. And the original open hand version was for martial application, and the closed hand version was more for health, structure, breathing, rooting, massaging your organs internally, etc., etc. So Sanchin went from martial to do. And some people say that Miyagi Chojun Sensei created the Sanchin version where there's steps backwards, 3 steps backwards, or stepping backwards, and that the reason he did that was because he had congestive heart failure, and that the students weren't turning away from him; they were just going backwards so he could always see him. That's silly. To think that or believe that is silly. First of all, he formed that kata stepping backwards before he had conjunctive heart failure or congestive heart failure. And secondly is he wouldn't be able to see their back. And he'd only be able to see the front. So by going forward, he sees the front. And when the student turns and goes the other way, he would see the rear. So even if he was experiencing heart failure, which at the time he created it, he wasn't, he would still want to see them turn. So today, people either say it's Sanchin Ich or Sanchin Ni, or Miyagi Chojun Sensei's Sanchin, or Higo no Kanyo Sensei's Sanchin. And if you say it's Higo no Kanyo Sensei's Sanchin, then you're referring to the turning Sanchin. And if you say that it's Miyagi Chojun Sensei's Sanchin, you're referring to the no turn, stepping backward version. So in the Koryu Koshukai, we retain the open hand version. We also do the other 2 versions. And so Sanchin is the core of Goju Ryu. It's the core kata for Uechi-ryu as well. Ryu, the family art, was also based on Sanchin. So the art of Tonryu from Jihatsu Kyoto Sensei, also the core kata is Sanchin. Why is that? Well, Sanchin is in everything. To explain that a little bit better, besides teaching you to root and to pull energy, so actually your ligaments and your tendons and your fascia have energy that you push into the ground trying to root. That energy rebounds and comes back to you, and that's how you're pulling energy from the ground. It's just not random energy that's underground that you're able to trap and suck up into your body somehow. It's energy that you send into the ground that rebounds and comes back to you. Okay, and it's through the softer tissue. It teaches you rooting, perfect posture, setting your tendon, and dynamic tension, harmonizing breath to technique, okay, which is very difficult. So it's a simple kata, simple pattern, difficult to perform correctly. Sanchin is in all things. So if you block Jodan Agyuke, at the very moment that it concludes, in which it would be blocking an overhead strike, you kime and lock just as you do in Sanchin. When you punch Yakuzuki, once you punch and your punch connects to the opponent and it's at the conclusion of the execution of the technique, you kime and lock just like Sanchin. So you're making sure that you have proper skeletal structure, proper body alignment, you're using proper biomechanics, you're using proper breathing, you're using proper tension, and it only occurs at the moment of impact. So it's in all those things. Sanchin is always present because you're also developing an iron shirt, so in which you can take contact. And so when you connect and you hit, or you block and you receive as an uki, and you kime and you employ all the attributes of Sanchin at that moment of contact. If you're countered and hit, you also have your iron shirt on, which is formed from Sanchin. You also have been trained through Sanchin and assistance called Shime to retain your focus and retain your breathing and retain the execution of your technique and to maintain your posture, even while being pushed, pulled, and slapped, and your muscles checked and your whole body checked. And so it prepares you for a lot. So Sanchin is much more than just a health kata. It is much more than just massaging your internal organs. All those things are beneficial, but that's why it's the core. So I don't have time to move through in one episode all of the kata of Goju Ryu, but they're very deep. They all teach specific principles. They all teach fighting strategies. They all have their purpose. They all have their benefits. They all contain ukiden, hidden techniques within the movements. The thing is, those attributes and aspects of the kata of Goju Ryu are being lost as more and more masters have passed away. They've transmitted it to fewer and fewer people. So they've transmitted the art as a whole, not as incomplete, but meaning they've taught all the basics and all the kata. But in big group lessons of 20 to 100 people in class, or at university with several hundred, they never ever taught or got into those minute but important details. Traditionally, karate and all martial arts actually were fully transmitted in whole, one-on-one, from the master to a senior student who had demonstrated their dedication, their drive, their ability to learn, and they were willing to put in the work and the effort that made them worthy to receive the master's teaching. That student had to be dedicated, had to train many years, and had to have proven themselves to their teacher. As karate became public and grew, there became less and less focus on a lot of those aspects and attributes. And as more time goes by, it continues to be lost. So those people that have learned those things and that has had Okinawa Te, Tode passed on to them, they need to retain them, preserve them, and pass them on. I don't personally agree with reserving your deepest knowledge for only your most senior student. If something happens to that most senior student, the knowledge is broken and no longer goes on. It's like not having a son, and so your name passes when you pass, unless your daughters keep their name, keep your name. So that's kind of where karate is today. And the kata, there used to be an old saying that one kata was enough. And the reason they used to say one kata was enough and that more wasn't better is because just one kata, any of them, one kata teaches you how to properly use your body, teaches you about bone alignment, teaches you about releasing tension, teaches you about focus and kime, teaches you about proper tension, teaches you rooting, teaches you to have a good posture, teaches you to keep your chin down, teaches you to protect your center being your throat, your solar plexus, your tendon, and your groin. Okay. So all of the kata do that. So they used to state that one kata was enough. But today it seems that many believe more kata are better. In my personal opinion, not pertaining to all, there's people that have mastered them all. In my personal opinion, more isn't better. I think today, to keep students and retain students and to make students happy, many sensei teach all the kata and kata above one's rank. So they didn't used to be associated to rank. Miyagi sensei and Higo Kanyo sensei used to just pick a kata that fit the student, that they thought that the student was ready for, and they taught it to him. And most students learned Sanchin and 1 to 3 other kata. And that was enough. But today, the order of kata is set by level and belt, etc. And today, a Nidan or Sandan will learn Sumparumpe. And, somebody, and that's okay if the teacher thinks that their student has mastered the kata below those. That's okay if the student has broken down and analyzed and can apply that kata and has derived and understands its principles and its fighting strategy. And if the student has really deep knowledge and the teacher knows that, that's okay, because it didn't used to exist that you were taught by rank. But it does today. And it is organized and it is formal today. Today, I see many students that should not be practicing the next kata or the next 3 kata or the next 4 kata based on their ability and their performance of the kata they have been taught. I think that they're taught those additional kata to keep them, to make them happy, to pacify them. And that's okay. If that's your way as a teacher and it's your dojo, knock yourself out. Teach them everything you know in 5 years. Doesn't affect me. But it does affect the quality of your student and how well they perform the kata that you've taught them. And every student is a reflection on you. And every student is a reflection on your dojo. And every student is a reflection on your organization. And every student is a reflection on the style of Goju Ryu. If those things are important to you, then your student should be taught appropriate knowledge and technique in accordance with their current understanding, ability, and comprehension of the kata. And kata are deep, and it takes a long time and a lot of practice to really truly master a kata. And in fact, mastery may not even be possible. So kata, there's a lot to it, and we could have many episodes discussing each kata, and we could go into great depth, right? But that would be making videos of each kata and doing them physically and explaining all the details and showing all the ukiden, and all that stuff takes a really long time. And to cover what the principle each kata teaches and what the fighting strategy of each kata is and what it does for you and how it assists you and how it develops you and how it furthers you, what its benefits are, that's a lot of time training. That's just not a video. So for that kind of training, you have to have a teacher, be with your teacher, and your teacher decide you're ready to receive it. So everybody scratches the surface. Everybody does similar karate or kata, but not nearly enough know all the intricacies and details of a kata that really make the kata exciting, fun, and more alive. Kata aren't robotic. You should be changing your body height. You should be utilizing gravity to your benefit. You should be sinking and using that gravity to increase your power. You should be, at times, in certain techniques, rising when you block. There's a whole lot to kata, and kata teaches a lot. But I want to talk real quick about, let's just say you never learned bunkai. You never knew how to apply it. You never, ever broke it down. You think kata is a physical exercise. And for some people it is. In fact, it's a pretty good physical exercise. The range of motion kata requires for your body is amazing. So let's just say that's the case, and bunkai doesn't exist. Let's take it off the table in the curricula, okay? Karate kata more than prepares your body for combat. The way it twists and drops and raises and turns and explodes and stops and roots and tenses and relaxes and releases tension and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all those attributes are excellent for combat. So it's like shadow boxing in boxing. It's like a kickboxer warming up on focus shields. Kata has many attributes with no understanding other than really good posture, bone alignment, body mechanics, flexibility, speed, power, tensing, relaxing, focus, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It has all those attributes are in there, and all of them are beneficial. You know, in the 14 years I was with the Japanese Goju Kai under the Yamaguchi family, with Gosei Yamaguchi Sensei in San Francisco. Actually, the dojo was 97 Collingwood in San Francisco. My sensei trained with him, and we were a part of that organization. And I personally trained there in that system for 14 years. Never heard of Bunkai, never used Bunkai, never did Bunkai. When I'd asked my sensei what this movement meant, what it was, he said, well, it could be this, could be that, could be this, and show me several things. But they were real sticklers, real sticklers, that's funny. They were very, very picky about, and anal almost, about symmetrics, about proper alignment, proper movement, relaxation, speed, power, turning, not breaking your posture, not losing your balance, maintaining your balance, etc. All those things were so beneficial. They were really beneficial. And so I personally believe after 53 years that kata is beneficial, even for combat, because of how it prepares your body. And, I bounced at the largest nightclub in a large city in California, and I was attacked every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And karate really helped me, and it really taught me what works and what doesn't work. I also fought in point tournament fighting, and I went undefeated for an entire year. And at the big event at the end of the year in Chicago, Illinois, Toki Hill Sensei defeated me by a wazari. Toki Hill Sensei is the first American to win the gold medal in Kumite at the World Championships in Spain in 1980. In 1979 and in 1980, I went undefeated in tournament competition, and I was just a young man of 19 and 20. And both those years, Toki Hill Sensei beat me. So he was the better man, and he won gold for America. God bless him. I'm glad he won because he brought home the gold for us. I may not have. I went on from there because our dojo didn't do any point fighting. My sensei didn't teach point fighting. I did this on my own. I did well because fighting in our dojo was hard. So I quit point fighting and for many years, and I went into full contact. And I fought full contact 72 matches. I was fortunate enough to win 68 of those. And I had 49 finishes where I finished my opponent. And I fought in a variety of full contact rules. Some Kyokushinkai, some kickboxing, some irikumi, some that included throws, some that didn't include throws, etc. So when I entered point competition and went on to start full contact, I didn't know Bunkai. I never learned kata application. In fact, I didn't even really like kata too much. I just really preferred the hard work and kumite. Okay. Higono Morio Sensei gave me a deeper appreciation for kata and got me to focus on kata. And Higono Morio Sensei taught me Bunkai. And he standardized me personally from Japanese Goju Kai kata to Okinawan Goju Ryu Kata. And I trained with him at his Hambu dojo for just about 7 years. And during that time, I learned a lot, and I had a lot of benefit. And I was a young man. I was 26 or 7 when I began training with Higono Sensei. I was already an Idan in Japanese Goju Ryu. And Sensei, fought and taught Irikumi, continuous, no point, full contact. Sometimes he sparred and had us go to the ground, including with him. Higono Sensei was even my final fight in grading. And so he himself personally. And every teacher gives you something that you get and that benefits you if they're a really high quality teacher for the rest of your life. And what I got from Sensei was an appreciation for kata, Hojo Undo in great detail, really, really excellent body conditioning, kakie, and I've retained all those things, practiced all those things, taught all those things ever since. So I wished I had known them earlier I wished I had knew those things earlier. And then I did all of Higona Sensei's Kihon Bunkai, but when I left Higona Sensei and his organization, I quit doing them immediately. I thought most of them were great for training, but not very practical, or not as practical, I should say, as I would like them to be. When I got to train with the first generation student of Miyagi Sensei, um, the the way he does kata and the way the details in the ukiden and the bunkai captured me immediately, became my focal point. That was from 2001, became my focal point for the rest of my career, rest of my journey. It's not a career. Um, so, so my lifelong teacher, Ohara Sensei, of 42 years. I was his student for 42 years, and he was like a father figure to me. And he was a 1960 Olympic powerlifter. He was an alternate on that team. He really understood physiology, kinesology, biomechanics. Um, the best teacher I've ever met in my entire life, as far as understanding power generation and how the body works and how the body should move and body alignment. And he really favored sparring too, so all of us could fight. Um, so I was his student for 42 years. And when he passed away, he made me the chief instructor and the chairman of an organization that we had formed in 1999 and that we conceived in 1995, and an organization to be absent of politics and to retrain and preserve and foster traditional Okinawan Goju Ryu and the old ways, but for modern times. And kata is a part of that. It's an important part. Without kata, it's not karate. You cannot have or call it Okinawan karate if it does not contain kata, and if kata is not a part of the core curricula. So I don't want to get too far off base here, but I wanted to talk about kata, and I wanted to share some information about kata. And it's okay if you have a different opinion, and it's okay if you completely disagree with me. And it's okay if you learn something and now you adopt it yourself. Um, this is your journey, man. Make it your own. I'm not here to tell you your way is right or your way is wrong, or that my way is the only way, or that my way is the only right way. I know that my way isn't wrong because it works. I know my students and I can apply it. I know that we understand it. And that's what I want for you too. I want you to be able to apply and understand your art. And I'd like to talk more about kata, and we'll do another episode on it. And we'll get into why kata has different versions and why those exist. And it's much more than just when they trained, how long they trained. That's part of it. How long they trained with Miyagi, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of those versions and differences were intentional, and were intentional on the teacher's part. So it's not always as we think or believe. And, kata is beautiful because unlike kumite, I'm 66 now, unlike kumite, you can do kata for the rest of your life. And I think the coolest thing is I saw a video on YouTube. I can't remember the name of it, but I saw a video, and it was like everybody in the video, 6 or 7 of these guys were all red belts, and they showed up at the dojo, and one of them made a pot of coffee. And then in twos, they went out on the floor and did kata together. Well, first they warmed up together, but it was a minor warm up. And then in twos, they did kata. And then sometimes 5 of them did kata and stuff. And then the headmaster did some kata. And none of it's in English. None of it's in English. And there isn't really any talking in it. But when they were done, they poured coffee and sat around and visited. Man, how cool of a retirement is that? Get up, walk or drive down to the dojo, meet your best friends, meet your kohai, your senpai, and your doshi in the dojo. Get on your gi, get out on the floor, do kata at whatever level, speed, and power you have at that age. All these guys were 70s and 80s. Sit down, have a cup of coffee, and visit with your friends. And discuss karate and life and stuff. Man, what a beautiful life that is. That's the kind of life for me. Anyway, enjoy your journey, and thanks for tuning in. And if you like this, man, please feel free to share it. Please subscribe. Then every time I make a video, you'll be notified. When you're notified, you can click and join in. And in future episodes, I'm going to have some guests. We're going to go into a lot of other topics.
I just, I want to focus on empty hand karate and also kabuto, but also having an open mind. Just, we're a huge family. Worldwide karate, not family like your blood family, etc. But we've shared things that just regular friends don't share. We share sweat and blood and effort and time and all these other things together on the floor. We talk about them. We push each other. Steel sharpens steel. We form a bond through our common interest. And the beautiful thing is, regardless of what you think about rank, the beautiful thing is on the floor, everybody sees what everybody else really is. So there's nowhere to hide on the floor. There's nowhere to pretend, and there's no way to fool anyone. So put on your gi, go out in shorts and a t-shirt, go out without a shirt. I don't care. But go out and train. And if you have a friend or a student or a peer to train with, that's even better. So have a great week. Train hard, train often, and keep doing it. Thanks for joining in, and we'll see you next time.